Erased is a 2016 anime. It aired between January and March of 2016 for 12 episodes. I will say, it's on Crunchyroll, but for some reason the subs on Crunchyroll do not sub when the characters are thinking, and that's a lot of the drama, especially at the beginning. On Hulu, where I watched it, it does have subs for when they are thinking. So if you want to do it on Crunchyroll, cool, but I would recommend Hulu because you understand a lot more. I was watching the first episode and I barely understood what he was thinking about, what he was doing for the entire episode for like 20 minutes because most of it was in his head because he wasn't talking too much to many people. So just FYI, if you want to understand a lot more that's going on, especially the dialogue and his thoughts, or anybody's thoughts for that matter, you might want to watch this on Hulu in the United States. So for people who have never seen this anime, it is about a guy in his 20s. He lives in Tokyo. He has always had this power that he can travel several minutes back in time, 10, 30 hour before a life-threatening incident happens. And they give examples of this right away. He is a manga artist or wannabe manga artist. His mother ends up getting killed and he tries to go back in time in order to save her, but accidentally goes back 18 years, like 1988, I think this is the year, when he was a child in another town. And he realizes that his mother's death is connected to something that happened when he was a child. There were some killings and kidnappings when he was a child in elementary school that happened in this town, and he has figured out that they are somewhat connected. So now he has to save these people in his town in order to save his mother. At least that is his thought process. I'm trying not to do any spoilers because I don't want to reveal too much. This is a spoiler-free review. I don't want to spoil anything. Just FYI, no spoilers. I'm going to tell you things that I liked about this anime, and then I'm going to go into things that I did not like about this anime. The first thing I loved is the male lead's mother. I thought she was a badass character. Her character brought many heartwarming incidents into this anime, which helped contrast against the very dark subject matter this anime had. Trigger warning for child abuse, child death, child violence, domestic violence. If you can't handle that stuff, I would not recommend this. His mom, I loved his mother. I loved Satoru's mother. I liked her for two reasons. She supported her son no matter what. She didn't question when he was running around trying to save these people. She just supported him in any way that she could, saving his butt in multiple situations, and also trusted him 100%. When he brought people home, she didn't question it. She kind of just let it be. And because she accepted whoever he brought home into her home and made it a safe environment, the found family in this anime was great because his friends understood that his house was a safe spot and they could relax and she would fully be there for them. And I loved the friendship in this anime. I loved the found family, and I loved that her character created this safe space for these children amongst this plot that was just so dark at times. So his mom was great. Speaking of that too, the friendship was really good. The main character, Satoru, had a group of friends already, but you kind of got the point that he kind of distanced himself within his childhood, but also as they got older, they didn't see each other a lot, or they kind of lost touch. Him going back in time allowed him to reconnect with his friends, but also he collected more friends as Pokemon. He had a larger group of friends and a more close-knit group of friends from him investigating what was going on in his town. And then when he went back to the future, his 20-something-year-old self impacted his future and the relationships he had. So I loved the conversation of friendship and what impact a friendship can have on somebody's life in this anime. Another thing that I loved was the OSTs. Very memorable OSTs, especially the opening OST. I loved it. It was very weird to have these OSTs up against the subject matter of this anime because they were a little more upbeat than what I assumed would be, but still, they stood out. They were great. I loved the OSTs of this. The other thing I will say is I liked, even though that this is a very dark subject matter, you still got humor in this anime. It might not be everybody's cup of tea, but I laughed at certain parts. There was a running joke with Satoru because he was a child with a 20-something-year-old mind. He would say things out loud that he meant to think. And then he would automatically say, like, I said this out loud. It was funny. It cut through the tension and cut through the darker moments. And then some of the things that his friends as children said were also quite funny. So I appreciated that it did have some humor because it allowed the tension to kind of disappear for that moment, which was needed. Let's be honest. All right, so let's get into things I did not like. The one thing I will say is I felt like his power was explained enough, but I wanted more. You got the explanation of how his power worked, but you never got like when it started, how it started, and then if it ever went away. Like, it kind of just was there. And I wish there was a little more background with that. Maybe it's in the manga, I don't know, but I felt like there was something missing within the explanation of his power, and especially the history of it. Like, when did it start? I wanted more explanation with that. Speaking of more details, I wanted more details with some characters. Some characters were fine, just being superficial characters and kind of just there for a plot device. Others I wanted more explanation of. I just felt like they were there and I had questions about their character, especially if we ran into them as adults with some of his childhood friends. I felt like the live adaptation gave more context to some of the characters, and I wish the anime had as well. I just felt some of them were a little flat. They like didn't have enough story behind them to give them a more well-rounded character in the anime. Not every character needed that, but there was some, like his friend Kenya. I wanted more with his friend Kenya because I felt like there was something that should have been there and they just didn't put it in. It felt like Kenya should have been a larger character than he was in the anime. And maybe that's because I watched the drama before, and so I knew what the drama did with his character. I just felt like some of the characters needed a little more meat to them than they got. Other thing I will say, I had the same critique with the Jdrama, and I think this was just a story. Satoru, for a character that had a 20-year-old mind in a child's body, you think his decision making would be different. He was dumb sometimes. I just have to say it. He was dumb. He made some really dumb decisions. And as a child making that decision, yeah, that would make more sense. But he supposedly had a 20-something-year-old mind. To me, it seemed illogical. If he had that mind, he would make some of the decisions he had. And also, some of the other characters made some really poor decisions. So overall, some of the characters just were dumb. Satoru especially, but just some in general were really dumb and made some dumb decisions. Lastly, I will say one thing I did not like. I thought the ending was a little lackluster. It also seemed rushed. And again, I don't know if that's because I saw the drama first and I knew the ending was different when I watched the anime. I knew that going in, but I just felt like there was something more that should have been there, and they kind of just rushed it out and needed to complete it. And it made sense. It wasn't like a completely wonky ending that didn't make sense, but it seemed really rushed. It seemed really rushed and it was missing some details, and I just found it a little lackluster. I was like, really? That's it? That's the ending? For example, I didn't want like the villain to die or anything, but his ending in the anime just felt like the climax wasn't there. There was not enough stakes, I guess, in the ending of the anime. It just seemed rushed. It didn't seem like it was built up enough to have this big climax that resulted in good versus evil. It just seemed to end, and I was like, oh, okay, it was a good ending, but I wanted more from that ending. That was the biggest thing. I wanted more from the ending. Overall, I gave this anime an 8 out of 10. I liked it. I can see why a lot of other people liked it, but I had issues with it at the same time. So that is my final review of the anime Erased.